President Lee Jae-myung has underscored the need for Korea to expand its diplomatic reach across the global south, following his recent visits to India and Vietnam. Korea has surged past the UK to become the world's 8th largest stock market, as AI-driven tech gains lift its hard stocks to a fresh record high. U.S. President Donald Trump is weighing a fresh proposal from Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, even as Tehran continues to fall to Washington for the collapse of peace talks. President Lee Jae-myung is pushing to broaden Korea's diplomatic reach beyond its traditional partners. Following his trip to India and Vietnam, the president at a cabinet meeting today emphasized deeper engagement with the global south. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yoo-jin starts us off.
President Lee Jae-myung has stressed the need to broaden South Korea's diplomatic outreach to the global south following his recent trip to India and Vietnam.
변화의 물결 속에서 안정적 성장 동력을 확보하려면 특정 지역에 대한 지나친 의존도를 낮추고 우리의 선택지를 꾸준히 늘려가는 전략적이고 유연한 국익 실용 외교가 절실합니다.
Chairing his first cabinet meeting since the trip on Tuesday, President Lee said the war in the Middle East is reshaping the global economic and security landscape and called for a more strategic and flexible diplomatic approach. Tuesday's meeting reviewed the outcomes of Lee's state visits with a particular focus on strengthening economic ties with India.
어쨌든 미국, 유럽, 중국에 편중돼 있는 게 현실인데 인도는 지금 세계에서 제일 인구도 많고 14억 6천인가 7천만이라고. 근데 이게 이제 기업들이 독자적으로 진출하기에 초기에는 부담이 사실은 있는데 이 정부 간 협력이 되게 크게 도움되잖아요.
Lee's summit with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi resulted in an agreement to establish a ministerial-level Korea-India Industrial Cooperation Committee, along with an MOU to support cooperation between the two countries' small and medium-sized enterprises.
In the case of our ministry, one deputy director covers 5 to 6 countries, including India. Despite India's importance, our current institutional capacity remains limited. We need to strengthen our governance framework to reflect India's strategic significance.
At the same time, President Lee underscored the importance of maintaining stable ties with traditional partners. He urged resolving pending issues based on mutual respect and shared principles while building forward-looking relationships. The president didn't mention specific countries, but his remarks come after the U.S. reportedly restricted intelligence sharing with Seoul on North Korea following the unification minister's disclosure of the regime's nuclear facility in Kusong. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung has vowed to overcome a national crisis based on social integration and the spirit of Admiral Lee Sun-shin. He attended the 481st anniversary of the birth of the 16th century naval commander Lee Sun-shin on Tuesday in the city of Asan. In his speech, he noted uncertainties stemming from the rapidly changing international order and rising energy costs due to the Middle East war. He said society needs to overcome challenges together, just as the admiral saved the country from Japanese invasion more than 400 years ago. The president also promised to achieve co-prosperity in a fair society and vowed to make the country one of the global leaders in AI. Korea has risen to 8th place in the world in stock market rankings, powered by strong gains in AI-driven chip stocks, as the benchmark Kospi climbed to a new record high on Tuesday. Kim Jun-hong tells us more.
Korea has overtaken the UK to rank as the world's 8th largest stock market, driven by a strong rally in AI-related tech heavyweights. Bloomberg reported Tuesday that the total market capitalization of Korean-listed firms has jumped more than 45% this year to around $4.04 trillion. This far outpaces the UK, which has seen only a roughly 3% rise to $3.99 trillion. Until the end of 2024, the UK market was about twice as large as Korea's, but sharp gains this year have quickly reversed that. Bloomberg attributed the surge to strong gains in AI-driven chip stocks. The report highlighted industry leaders Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, noting that the two memory chip giants now account for more than 40% of the benchmark Kospi.
Korea's stock market has long traded below what its economic size would suggest, but the recent rally has brought it closer to fair value. Gains are being supported by a resilient AI-driven semiconductor cycle.
Another expert says policy efforts to ease the so-called Korea discount are also helping drive the rally.
Since March, a push for share buybacks and stronger shareholder returns has helped stabilize the market. Combined with rapid earnings growth, the Kospi has shown a clear outperformance against global peers.
Meanwhile, the Kospi continued its upward rally Tuesday, finishing at 6,641.02, up 0.39% from the previous close. At one point in the session, the index rose to 6,712.73, topping the previous intraday high in the 6,600 range set just a day earlier, and moving above the 6,700 mark for the first time. The rally moved in line with gains on Wall Street. Overnight, major U.S. indexes closed at record highs, lifted by optimism of strong big tech earnings, despite ongoing uncertainty over ceasefire talks between Washington and Tehran. Kim Junong, Arirang News.
The Bank of Korea's net profit hit an all-time high in the first quarter of this year. The cumulative net profit stood over 4.2 trillion won, or some $2.9 billion US. That is up 3 times the amount from the first quarter of last year. The gains were garnered amid a persistently high exchange rate that averaged over 1,461 to the dollar throughout the quarter, boosting returns on the bank's foreign currency securities and overseas asset management. The record earnings are expected to benefit government revenues, as the central bank is required by law to transfer a significant portion of its annual profit to the national treasury. The National Assembly's extraordinary session for April ended on Tuesday after a rare burst of bipartisan lawmaking, despite weeks of intense political confrontation. Attention is quickly shifting to a constitutional reform vote next month and the fast-approaching June 3rd local elections. For more on what got done in April and what could dominate politics in May, we are joined by our political correspondent, Moon Hae-ryan. Good evening, Hae-ryan.
Good evening, Tammy.
So, Hae-ryan, despite the political gridlock, the lawmakers did manage to come to some tangible results. What stands out the most?
Yes, that's right. So even in a highly polarized environment leading up to the June 3rd local elections, lawmakers did manage to pass some immediate measures with real-world impact. And the biggest was a supplementary budget worth 26.2 trillion Korean won, designed to cushion households and businesses from the economic shock of high inflation and elevated energy prices linked to Middle East instability. Now, the package includes direct relief payments for lower-income households, with the first round of applications and payouts already underway. The package also includes support for fuel costs, public transportation discounts through the K-Pass program, and supply chain stabilization measures for key industrial materials like naphtha.
I see. Now, Hae-ryan, now that the April session is over, we are nearing May. What's next for the upcoming May extraordinary session?
So attention is rapidly shifting to a major constitutional reform vote in early May, potentially one of the most significant in nearly 4 decades. And that's because the proposed amendment would be the first revision to South Korea's constitution since 1987. It includes symbolic and substantive changes, so formally recognizing the democratic legacy of the May 18th Gwangju democratization movement, strengthening assembly control over martial law declarations, and adding the state's responsibility for balanced regional development. Speaker Woo Won-sik says the package reflects a broad public consensus and has urged main opposition People Power Party lawmakers to be allowed a free vote, rather than being bound by party opposition.
This reform would open the door to revising an outdated constitution and moving the country forward. If it fails now, the next chance may not come for some time. Please make every effort to ensure it reaches a plenary vote.
Now, this matters because passage requires a two-thirds majority of the 295-seat assembly, meaning at least 197 votes. Reform supporters currently have 187 signatories, so they would need defections or cross-party support from the Conservatives. The PPP, however, has raised suspicions that broader reform efforts could eventually be used to reopen debate over presidential term limits, although supporters note that the current constitution explicitly bars any extension of the sitting president's term through amendments.
And beyond the parliament, like I mentioned, local elections are just now weeks away. How are the parties looking so far, Hae-ryun?
So both major parties, so the PPP and the DP, they're both in the final candidate selection phase leading up to the official campaigning period, but they're doing so from very different positions. The ruling Democratic Party has finalized its nominations across all metropolitan and provincial contests, while the People Power Party has yet to settle on a candidate for Gyeonggi-do Province governor. With its slate in place, the DP has shifted focus to campaigning, so centering its message on budget relief measures and regional development promises, hoping to frame the local races as a referendum on the new administration's momentum and delivery. The party believes it now has a genuine opening even in several traditionally conservative regions. The People Power Party, meanwhile, is contending with internal turbulence. Its leader faces mounting criticism from within the party over both its leadership and campaign strategy, leaving questions about how unified a front the PPP can present as election day approaches. Several races in cities such as Busan and Daegu are expected to test whether long-standing regional voting patterns are beginning to shift. So while April was about passing legislation, May and early June now look set to be about political survival, constitutional reform, and control of local power.
A crucial few weeks coming in the Korean politics. Hae-ryun, thank you for the report tonight.
Thank you for having me.
The United States has reportedly discussed Iran's proposal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, but questions linger over whether Washington would agree to delay talks on Tehran's nuclear program. Our Oh Seong has more.
US President Donald Trump may be weighing a new Iranian proposal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, a move that could ease global energy tensions. The White House says Trump discussed the proposal with his national security team on Monday. This comes after Iran reportedly shared a two-stage peace plan with Washington through Pakistan, offering to reopen the vital shipping route if Washington lifts its naval blockade and the war comes to an end. Iran also proposed delaying negotiations over its nuclear program to a later stage. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt told reporters Monday afternoon that the proposal was being discussed.
The meeting may be ongoing, maybe not. I don't want to speak affirmatively because I was prepping to come out here, but the proposal was being discussed. I don't want to get ahead of the president or his national security team. What I will reiterate is that the president's red lines with respect to Iran have been made very, very clear, not just to the American public, but also to them as well.
The Trump administration has repeatedly said its key objective is to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio reiterated this position on Monday in a Fox News interview, saying any agreement that is made is one that definitely prevents them from sprinting towards a nuclear weapon. He also said any arrangement allowing Iran to control access to the strait would not be acceptable. Diplomatic efforts, meanwhile, have hit a setback. On Saturday, Trump cancelled planned talks in Pakistan involving senior envoys, including Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, saying too much time wasted on travelling. The cancellation halted immediate prospects of a second round of negotiations after earlier talks in Islamabad 2 weeks prior ended without a deal. A breakthrough does not look imminent. At the United Nations on Monday, the US called for greater international coordination to secure maritime routes, while Iran denounced the US naval blockade as illegal. Tehran state media Tasnim reported Tuesday that Iran's foreign ministry further condemned the US seizure of vessels carrying Iranian oil as an unlawful act. Oh Seong, Arirang News.
In the meantime, Iran's foreign minister continues to blame excessive demands from the U.S. for the collapse of recent talks. Tehran, however, says it still remains open to dialogue while strengthening ties with Russia. Kim Keon has this report.
After a second round of ceasefire talks with the United States fell through, Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi headed to Russia. Speaking shortly after his arrival, Araghchi sharply criticized Washington, saying its approach had derailed negotiations.
The Americans' approaches caused the previous round of talks, despite the progress that had been made, not to reach their objectives. They made excessive demands and adopted incorrect approaches.
In an interview with local media, Araghchi argued that the reason President Trump had proposed the talks was because the U.S. had failed to achieve any of its war objectives against Iran. He highlighted that the Iranian people had prevailed through resistance and said Tehran is still reviewing whether to restart the talks. Ahead of his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, Araghchi said the two sides would coordinate efforts to bring the war to an end. Putin, for his part, voiced strong support for Tehran. Putin also revealed that he had received a message last week from Iran's supreme leader, underscoring deepening ties between the two countries.
I would like you to convey my most sincere words of gratitude and to confirm that Russia, like Iran, intends to continue our strategic relations.
Meanwhile, Iran's parliament adopted a statement backing its negotiating team, with 261 out of 290 members expressing support. Members of the parliament accused external forces of fueling speculations over internal disagreements about talks and reaffirmed their confidence in Parliamentary Speaker Galibaf, who is leading the negotiations. This move appears aimed at countering growing claims in the West that Iran's hardliners' clashes are limiting the negotiators' authority. Kim Keon, Arirang News.
The U.S. says its Golden Dome missile defense system is needed to counter growing threats from North Korea, China, and Russia. While Seoul's top nuclear envoy called North Korea the most urgent challenge to the global non-proliferation regime. Our defense correspondent Kim Keon has the details.
Mark Berkowitz, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of War for Space Policy, has said the Golden Dome, a next-generation air and missile defense system, is necessary to protect the U.S. homeland from military threats posed by North Korea, China, and Russia. This came from written testimony submitted ahead of a Senate Armed Services Committee subcommittee hearing on Monday local time. While highlighting that Washington's competitors are expanding, diversifying, and increasing the sophistication of their missile and air capabilities, Berkowitz said that building a comprehensive next-generation air and missile defense system is essential to strengthening deterrence and defending the home country. He specifically named China, North Korea, and Russia, saying these countries are expanding their nuclear and missile forces. Especially regarding North Korea, he pointed out how the regime continues to enhance its nuclear, missile, and air weapons capabilities, posing a direct and growing threat to the U.S. He added that North Korea's full range of missiles threatens American, South Korean, and Japanese territory, while its ICBMs are capable of striking the U.S. mainland. Meanwhile, South Korea's top nuclear envoy underlined the need to resolve the North Korean nuclear issue, calling it the most urgent challenge to the non-proliferation regime. During his keynote speech at the 11th Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty Conference held in New York on Monday local time, Chung Hyun-doo, Vice Foreign Minister for Diplomatic Strategy and Intelligence, said that Pyongyang was the only case of a country that benefited from the NPT regime, but which then declared a withdrawal and continues to openly develop nuclear weapons. He added that it remains the most pressing challenge to the non-proliferation regime. He also urged Russia to stop its illegal military cooperation with the North. Kim Keon, Arirang News.
The man who allegedly opened fire at the White House correspondents' dinner attended by U.S. President Donald Trump has been charged with attempting to assassinate the president. Our Kim Do-yeon has more.
The suspect in the shooting at the White House Correspondents Association dinner has been charged with the attempted assassination of U.S. President Donald Trump and could face life in prison. On Monday local time, the U.S. Department of Justice formally indicted Cole Thomas Allen.
Today, the Department of Justice filed 3 federal charges in United States District Court against Cole Thomas Allen. The first count is attempted assassination of the President of the United States. This count is punishable by up to life in prison.
Allen faces 2 additional charges: the interstate transportation of a firearm to commit a felony and the discharge of a firearm during a crime of violence in what U.S. prosecutors called a premeditated attack. Officials confirmed Allen traveled across state lines from California and positioned himself just 1 floor above the ballroom where the president was attending the event. He was apprehended carrying a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun, a .38 caliber semi-automatic handgun, and at least 3 knives. The White House swiftly condemned the attack, pointing to a newly discovered manifesto written by the suspect that detailed a clear intent to inflict massive harm on the president and other administration officials.
This political violence stems from a systemic demonization of him and his supporters by commentators, yes, by elected members of the Democrat Party, and even some in the media.
The shooting triggered a security emergency in Washington, with the breach coming as the United States prepares to host a series of major public events and large-scale gatherings to celebrate the 250th anniversary of its founding. To address vulnerabilities, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles is convening an urgent meeting early this week with top leadership from the Department of Homeland Security and the Secret Service to completely overhaul protection protocols for the upcoming national celebrations. Kim Keon Hee, Arirang News.
An appeals court order on Tuesday increased the sentence for Korea's former First Lady Kim Keon Hee from 20 months to 4 years in prison, following her guilty verdict on charges of corruption. The Seoul High Court overturned parts of the lower court ruling, finding her guilty of involvement in a stock price manipulation scheme and accepting illicit luxury gifts linked to the Unification Church. The court said Kim provided accounts and funds used in manipulating stock prices and recognized all charges related to gift-taking as a bribery involving implicit solicitation. However, she was acquitted of allegations related to receiving free opinion polls from broker Myung Tae-gyun, the same as the lower court. Kim's legal team says it'll appeal the ruling to the Supreme Court. In other news, BTS has earned a platinum certification from France's National Syndicate of Phonographic Publishing for its latest album, Arirang. The group's agency says the certification is awarded to albums that surpass the equivalent of 100,000 sales, including physical album sales and streaming. This marks BTS's 4th platinum certified group album, with the latest milestone achieved about a month after its release. Now, the previous albums were acknowledged after about a year.
Skies will clear up again from tomorrow, with daytime highs hovering around 20 degrees. But inland areas will see a big day-to-night temperature swing of around 15 degrees. So make sure to dress accordingly. Meanwhile, with the recent rain, some of the dry weather alerts have been lifted, but they're still in place for parts of Chungcheongdo, northern Jeollabuk-do, and Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces. So do stay cautious about fire risks. Tomorrow, Seoul will start the day at 8 degrees Celsius, Chuncheon at 6 degrees, Busan at 12 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 20 degrees, Daejeon at 20 degrees, Jeju at 16 degrees. Looking ahead, most regions will see clear skies, but with large day-to-night temperature swings throughout the week. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.